Okay, so got scene that's similar to the considerations that you are thinking about, which is just like the appearance of the bark on a tree. Okay, so when I click on that tree, I don't know if you can see this as well, but over here I can see various materials. Right, I click on the whole tree, and the one that I have here is bark, and I don't know what we named the bark on the sugar maple. I don't know, but you'll see the material list, and I think the sugar maple probably only has a few materials. But as I click on each of these materials, it highlights where it is, so that I don't have to go searching for it. So if I click on bark here, I can see this little icon. In fact, let me do this. Now you can see where I click. Right. So if I click on bark here, you can see it here. And then I've basically opened up the bark material to work on. So you can do the same thing by finding that sugar maple material and selecting it. Really, we just need to change one or two things, and it's this thing called the base map, which is the image used for the material. And I can even click on that and be taken to where that is here. So this is a fairly simple process. It's not too mysterious. Once you locate the material that you need, you can always make a new material also, if you would rather just do that. Right? I can right click and go to create material, and it'll make a blank material, and I apply that material just by dragging it onto anything. Right?
Okay.
Right. So
Easy.
so you can make a new material, or you can work with the existing material, but if you can't find the existing material, just make a new one. And it just really needs two inputs: the base map, which is the image, and then something called a normal map, which is a related image that basically gives the image bumpiness. So the base map looks kind of like this, right? It's the bark. And then the normal map is like a pink and purple and blue thing, but you can see that it gives it like a little bit of a surface. And so that's what allows the bark to actually receive light and shadow and reflect in a way that kind of corresponds to what would look like its bumpiness. Right, so you can see how this actually looks like it has a bit of depth, and where the shadow falls, it follows this. And I can actually adjust that normal map over here. Right, you can really make it. This is flat without a normal map. This is with like a crazy extreme normal map. So this is how you get three-dimensionality to models without modeling every little surface. This is something that I wish I had known a long time ago. Is you just use a normal map. So the question is, how do you find the right image, and how do you get a normal map to go with it? And there's a couple ways. One is if you can find or purchase CGI textures that have been developed to have seamlessness, right? So you don't see where the edges of the material, right, tile to the next one. And they also have a really good bump map. But you can also make your own. And I think with something like the perfect sugar maple bark, like it's unlikely to find the perfect material that you can purchase with a normal map. So we'll just make one. Following me so far? Okay. So you could use one of the images that Daphne sent also. That's fine. Right. What I usually look for is something that's not got so many little details and that like I'll see it repeat over and over again, but something that's a little bit more sort of uniform. Right. So something like this would be good. Something like this would be good. I'm just going to open up Photoshop in the background. I can also type seamless, and maybe someone will have made one. I don't know. You could get lucky, right? Um, this I can see is not totally seamless. Like I can see right here where they touch. The thing is that like it may not be that important for it to be seamless. We'll see. I don't actually know that it is that important. where you can look up, it suggests other things, tileable texture, right? But this is not a sugar maple bark. I just don't think you're going to find exactly what you need. So I will just look up sugar maple bark. There's also tutorials out there on making a seamless texture. And there's actually engines that will do it for you. You can do it in Photoshop. Right, so all right, click on this link here. So this is there's tutorials that let you take, this is now, you can see it's where the seams touch, you can make it seamless, but there's also engines that will do it for you. It basically takes it from that to that. So I don't know that you need to spend your time doing it. Right, so this is quite a nice image, right? So you can download it or copy the image. And then I'm going to put it into Photoshop. Right. And usually you want it to be a square. But it's up to you. But I'm going to kind of just like try to get as much of that as I can. And you can play around sometimes where, like, I think I want to avoid this side where it's got a lot of light and try to get a more even and balanced area in the middle. So the issue is that with the original tree was the scale was too big because I zoomed in on a little area. So if you can get like a lot of the bark, something with a little bit more diameter to the tree, for example, that might be good, just so you can get more variation. This one looks like it could be great. Right? It's got that kind of knot there, but maybe this would work. So let me try that one instead. So hunt around for something where you can get a lot of the tree. I'm not sure why it didn't do this in the first place. Right. So what I want to do is just probably avoid this part. And it actually doesn't have to be totally square, right? So then I'll save this. That's just a JPEG. Okay, it's pretty easy after this point because there's things that will do this work for us. So for example, I'll go to this website and let it make this tileable. Because if I were to take two of these and put them next to each other, so let me do something like this to illustrate why it's not good. This is what we get on the tree. And so part of the problem with it originally was I think I scaled up the material to avoid seeing those seams. So this looks bad. It just doesn't, it's not going to work. So we'll put it in this engine. And you could use this one, you could use something else. There's several of them. Right? So I'll find my file that I just cropped. The more you can go into Photoshop, for example, let me just take a few steps back. The more you can go in and edit the image ahead of time, right? Like I might want to dodge this area. Do you guys know how to do that in Photoshop? Mm-hmm. It'll help, right? Sort of dodge and burn it or something like that. That could help a little. So kind of preparing the image. Just because the computer can't do everything for you. So now I will get my sugar maple bark. Play around, right, with the settings if you want to. And so you can, this is the image it's made, right? You can tile it to see how it worked. So it's now tiled it. And you can see there's a little issue in the middle. So I might just crop the edges in a little bit more in Photoshop. But it's like, you don't see, you have to be looking for that line to really find it. So it did a pretty good job. And then I'm going to download it. So now I've got my JPEG right here. So I can use that for my tree as is. Let's do that first. So I'm going to set my normal map to nothing. And then I can pull in this image. I have to first import it into Unity. So I usually put it in the same place as where my material is. So now I've got this seamless texture right here. So all I really need to do is, because I've already applied my bark to this tree, it's already on there. I just drag this new material into base map, right, and it replaces it. And then I might want to play around with the tiling, right? I think I had done a 1:2 tiling ratio. The smaller it is, the more you see of it, right? So, and sometimes I need to do a different ratio, right? 0.5 to 1. So maybe I'll try like 1 to 4 to play around with it. You know, depending on the aspect ratio, like if it's not a perfect square, I often need to reflect that in the tiling. And the larger the number gets, the smaller the image gets, right? So I could do like 2 to 8. Let's see what you get. 2 to 20. Okay, that worked. I don't know. You just have to play around with it. So see where that little knot in the middle caused that problem, right? You know, if you're getting it from a certain angle, like you can play around with the offset, and it will, I think, in this direction. But that didn't do anything, so never mind. Okay, so now I've got my texture on there, but it looks very flat. So now I do need that normal map. So any questions so far? Okay, we'll try that. Right, so the larger starting image you have, the less repetition you'll get. So I use this free software called Shader Map 4 that you can download. And it does say, do you want to pay for it at first? But you don't have to. It works really well free. So I will click on this little air folder plus. And I'll get my seamless texture, and this will bring it into Shader Map 4. So then it'll take the material and it'll kind of like process it until it makes like a 3D representation of that. And I can click on, it gives you other types of associated images that are part of making a 3D texture, but we don't really need to worry about these, in part because the way that Unity does high definition materials doesn't use these other types of images here. It doesn't use a displacement map. So all we really need is the normal map. So now we can edit the normal map, which is like one of those little pictures, right? So this is lowering the bumpiness, right, all the way to flat, or like super bumpy. So I usually find that like for bark, like something a little bit below the midpoint works. Anyway, then I click on this little floppy disk icon and click save. Right? And it's going to go ahead and save a little normal map file right next to my other image. Right? There's my normal map. Sometimes that looks like it might be the inverse of what I want. So I'm going to just click on invert mask. and save that one too.
How did you see that quickly?
Yeah, was it the colors that you were looking at?
I just think it looked concave. So I don't know. It might be fine, but it just looked off to me. But I've looked at a lot of these and I still don't really know. So you see that it's like a perfect overlay with this. Anyway, you can click invert and it'll just flip it for you if you want. Okay, so now back in Unity, I'm just going to do the same thing as I did with the other texture. I'm going to drag the normal map in here. Okay, so now on my bark, you can probably guess what happens next. I drag it into normal map and it becomes 3D. Pretty cool, right? And so then you can similarly play around with it. So one gives you like a starting normal map with like its intensity, but then you can also further control it within Unity. But it's striking how much of a difference it makes. Okay, any questions about that? See, it really just like totally captures the light. I think it's fascinating.
It is, yeah.
So I will put